Joining me now is Zerlina Maxwell of SiriusXM, a former advisor to the Clinton campaign, and Republican strategist Evan Siegfried as well. Zerlina, let me start with you. I'll ask each of you about this, just the way this is changing or looming over political discourse in this country. We focused over the course of the hour here on the legal implications of what we learned yesterday. Politically, did things change yesterday when this happened?
Yes, I think so. I mean, when you have actual charges, when you have the former national security advisor and not the former campaign manager, right? We're talking about somebody who was actually in the White House, somebody extremely close to President Trump, who pled guilty. So now he's a convicted felon of lying to the FBI, which is a very serious charge. Apparently, Donald Trump knew that at the time, because today he tweeted that he fired Michael Flynn for lying, in part because he lied to the FBI. So there's nothing like a real indictment and real charges when you file court documents that belie the argument that this is fake.
Evan, you see how this plays out in Washington. Yes, we had a vote last night at 3 a.m. On this piece of tax reform legislation, but I think many members of Congress, if not all of them, would say this investigation, these investigations are looming large over the policymaking process. When you get out of Washington, when you get across America, is it beginning to affect how people think of politics as well?
Well, I think people already think of politics as a very partisan and divided nation, and that's why there are a lot of people who are sick of it and just want to see Congress actually achieve results. And I think we're going to see that in 2018 and 2018 reflected in the way voters vote. But the president, to go to what Zerlina said, the president fired Michael Flynn on February 13th. And then on February 14th is when he had the infamous Comey meeting when he asked him to get rid of the investigation and just drop it. That doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. He's saying it was very serious that he lied to the FBI, but the FBI should drop it. Lying to the FBI is a crime, period. And the president doesn't seem to grasp that, and he's digging himself into a bigger hole. At the same time, I'm hearing in conservative circles this argument that, well, look what this special counsel has done. They spent $5 million, and all they've gotten is Manafort on stuff not related to the campaign, George Papadopoulos, who was a coffee boy, and General Flynn for lying about something not really related to the campaign. So they're going out and they're making that argument and trying to get that to stick in the conservative base. And they're going out and they're starting to pressure people from the base to push Congress to defund the Mueller probe, because the Mueller probe, if Mueller got fired, you'd see Republicans turn on Trump in an instant publicly. But if you defund it, you're not technically firing Mueller, you're just not able to pay anybody working for Mueller, and nobody works for free.
So we're dealing with and living under the leadership of somebody who is very outspoken, it goes without saying, and he said time and time again, as we just heard, that this is a fake investigation. If you were counseling somebody, a Republican candidate who's seeking office now, what would you tell him or her about how much to engage with this issue? I think you might say to the president, best not to talk about this or tweet about what's going on. What would you say to somebody who, at a House or a Senate race, has to at some point engage with what's going on Capitol Hill and with the White House?
You've got to talk about the dysfunction on Capitol Hill. Forgetting Donald Trump for a second, Republicans in the House and the Senate having the majority in both, we should have had repeal and replacement of Obamacare done. We should have had a much easier time on tax reform and passing infrastructure spending and other bills. But we haven't, because we don't know how to govern. So you need to actually talk about how you are going to be a coalition builder, not only within the Republican Party, but with Democrats, to the extent that we can get Democrats to work with us and vice versa. So that's where I would focus. At the same time, there are a lot of issues out there that are impacting people. I would talk about tax reform and how we have this growing deficit, which is made worse by the tax reform package, the elimination of SALT. I would try and avoid Donald Trump as much as possible. He's already isolated and impotent on the Hill, and it should be on the campaign trail too.
Zerlina, would your counsel be the same for progressive or Democratic politicians as well, to focus on the issues and not focus on this one in particular?
I think it's a little bit of both and. I mean, I think that you want to point out to your constituents the danger that Donald Trump is to the country. I mean, I think that we're dealing with a national security threat, and I mean, just to be really frank about it, when you have somebody tweeting things that could impact our policies towards a tinderbox like North Korea. But on the other hand, I think that we have to, I do agree with Evan. I would also counsel Democrats to focus on the issues, because when it comes to this tax reform package, this is a giveaway to corporations, and essentially it's putting it on the backs of the middle class and poor people while simultaneously gutting Obamacare. And I think that, that's something that impacts not only people's pocketbooks, but also their health and their family members' health and their children's health. I mean, what was the rush to pass a tax reform package literally while we were asleep, when you can't extend CHIP, which is health insurance for children? You couldn't do that, but we had to pass tax reform in the dark of night. I think that the Republicans don't know how to govern, and they're just demonstrating that. So you would point out the issues that you would want to work on and why Republicans are not getting the job done in the majority.
Then I'll ask you lastly just about the degree to which the message from the president is sticking. He talks about the fake media, the fake news, and all of that. Is that resonating at all, do you think, with voters? Is it resonating less as we go through something like the tax reform process, where people are, I think, hungry for some indication of what's going to be in a big piece of legislation?
Look, I think the 30% or so of people that support Donald Trump, no matter what happens in the news and the Mueller investigation, they're probably still going to support Donald Trump. But when people are looking at less money in their paychecks and when they're getting bills for health care, it's going to be really real that Donald Trump is not getting the job done. And I think that the evidence will be very clear.
My thanks to both of you. Thanks so much for coming here on Saturday. Maxwell and Evan Siegfried joining me here in New York.